Hi, this is Edie from the Arlen Weavers, and I want to show you a helpful tip when you're weaving and you run out of yarn. Now, I don't think this is an easy tip to use if you're doing huck embroidery, but if you're doing Swedish weaving using any kind of yarn, then I think you could do it. Anyway, here's the problem. I'm actually doing a project that calls for double yarn because of the larger weave that you see here. And I ran out of yarn and I really don't want to have to pull it all out because this was an incredibly long piece. So I'm going to show you how to do a Russian join. Okay, first off, you want to get yourself some kind of blunt tapestry needle. I like this one. You want something that's smaller than the actual width of the yarn, or circumference of the yarn, I guess you would say. And then I usually pinch mine to pull it through. Now, you want to have somewhat of a little tail here, okay? And I'm going to make a loop. Now, what I'm going to do is as I make my loop, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to start feeding it inside the yarn. Now, some yarns are really loose, some yarns are much thicker, but I'm just going to keep weaving it in. See how I'm weaving that in? Don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? But you want to get it several inches in. It's a little tedious, but I like to try to get as much as I can. Now that I've done that, okay, I'm going to gently pull it through. And when I say gently, because you don't want to lose your loop, okay? See, mine's trying to get away from me right now. I'm sure there's some of my older weavers going, oh, there's an easier way to do this, but this is Edie's version. So I'm just going to pull that tail through. My yarn is really loose, so sometimes it's a little hard. Okay, there we go. All right, so now you can see I have a loop right here. Now, there is a tail here, but we'll worry about that later, okay? The one thing you do want to do is go ahead and remove your yarn from that tail, okay? We can come back and trim the tail later. Now, you want to go ahead and get the next piece of yarn that you're going to weave into the blanket. And I had mine cut somewhere. Okay, now here's the piece of yarn that I'm going to connect it to. This happens to be a yarn called Rock Candy. It's from the Gumdrop line. Anyway, I've got this gray and I want to match it up to the gray. So I'm going to make my loop using the gray. I've already threaded my needle. The next thing I'm going to do is do just like I did before. You want to keep a little tail going, but I'm going to go in and thread the needle. But before I do that, I want to find the loop that I did on my previous yarn. And be careful, because sometimes if you have a loose yarn, it's easy to forget where your loop is, but that looks good to me. So I'm going to weave it through. See, I wove it through that loop. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did just a moment ago. I am going to weave it through the yarn, get a couple of inches going on there. I usually just try to fill up my needle so that it's as thick or as full as I can get it. You have to forgive my narrating. I'm a science teacher by trade. I bet if I was an English teacher, I'd be a little bit better at narrating this, but that's okay. So as you can see, I'm getting quite a bit on there. Okay, now you can see that's several inches on there. Now, I carefully turn it around because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to gently pull that through until I get to my little tail. You may have to play with it to see what end it is. Now, here we go. Check that out. Check it out. Isn't that cool? Now what you can do later is go back and snip these yarns. The little snips, and sometimes I end up snipping some more depending on how my yarn goes. But look at that. So now I don't have to go through the trouble of reweaving this whole section or undoing it. I can go ahead and just weave with this piece, and look at that, it's pretty good. And I mean, this, you won't even see that. Now, I mean, have been some people, they have other things that they do or other tricks that they do. They may get another section of yarn and they may just weave it back about a few inches and then weave underneath what they already have done. That's okay, but for this particular project, I'm using a blanket that I found on overstock.com. It was just simply an even weave blanket. It's like a large, almost waffle. And because of that, it'd be really visible because the blocks are so big. So I wanted to make sure that I had something nice and strong that could help me. So anyway, this is cool. So I'm going to go ahead and do my other piece since this is a 2-ply project. And I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Thanks. Okay, so here I am back again. And as you can see, this is about where I had started with my Russian join. Wove it all the way back in. And if you look at it from a distance, I mean, you really cannot tell where the join was. Remember, this is 2 strands of yarn going through in the chevron pattern. So anyway, pretty cool. You know, you may not want to use Russian join on all things. If you're working with a delicate yarn, it may be a little obvious, but with this yarn, especially this loose worsted, it's really cool. It's a great way to not have to rip out a lot of work. Anyway, happy weaving. If you have any questions, I invite them and I'll try to answer them as I can. Summer break is coming, so I should have a lot more time. Thanks for watching. Bye.